Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digitally Uploaded podcast, the companion podcast for digitallydownloaded.net. I'm Matt Sainsbury, the editor-in-chief of that digitallydownloaded.net contents. And with me this week, we have Other Matt. Hello, Other Matt.
Hello, First Matt.
And we have Trent. Hello, Trent.
Hello. I'm not a Matt, though.
You're not a Matt. No, you're a Trent.
Yes.
Just making sure that's clear, because otherwise people might get confused. They might think there's three Matts, and that would be very confusing. Okay, we have a lot to talk about on the podcast this week. It's going to be a good one, so get yourself a coffee, a hot chocolate, a bowl of wine, or whatever else you drink while you're listening to this podcast, and we will come back straight after some Hatsune Miku music. Okay, so it has been a very big week for news, and I know we don't usually talk about the news on the podcast, but I reckon it's been better than E3 this last week, to be honest. All the announcements that have been coming, they've been coming thick and fast, and it's been fun to keep up with them, that's for sure. Let's start with the biggest bit of news that came over the last week, and that is that Hatsune Miku is coming to the Nintendo Switch, which is very exciting, and I'm very happy about this, as you can probably guess. We don't know
Are you really?
Oh, yeah, just a little bit. I think I have a reputation for being a fan of Hatsune Miku or something. Because, the announcement happened overnight while I was asleep, and then I wake up the next morning and there's like 300 messages on my Twitter, my notifications going, Matt's going to be so excited when he wakes up. I think people know that I like Miku for some reason. I don't know what gave it away. But yes, she is. She's coming to Switch, and it's great. What we know about the game is that it is basically the 90 tracks that were in Project Diva Future Tone on the PlayStation 4, the big game that's on there. And on top of that, there's 11 new tracks or something. And there's a new art style. Miku is all cel-shaded and cute, and it's great.
And it's making controversy. Yay!
It's making controversy? I
yes.
missed that.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's like, well, the PS4 has this hardcore graphic style while the Switch has this kiddie style. That's what's happening on the internet.
Who says that?
Really?
Yeah, I saw people post comparisons and be all like, well, the Switch style is like crap because it's all anime, and the PlayStation style is like all good because it's got like, graphics.
You need to send me these people, Trent. I'll have words with them. I'll put them straight because they're wrong. It looks great. She looks great. Switch is great. And in all honesty, actually, in all sincerity, the one thing I've been waiting for on my Switch is a Miku game. That's the one thing that I thought was missing between what was coming, we knew was coming, and what was already on the console. So I was, this kind of rounds out everything that I wanted on my Switch. So I'm very happy about this. What about you, Matt? I know you're a fan of Miku, not maybe as much as me, but you like the games, right?
I do. And yeah, I haven't played. Like, I've got Future Toad on PS4, and I play it every now and then, and I enjoy it, but I don't play it as much as I think I would if it was on Switch. And now we're basically getting the same thing on Switch. So
Rhythm games are better handheld, I believe.
yeah, I definitely think so.
Yeah, so I spent thousands of hours playing Miku on the PS4, and you think I'm joking about that? I'm actually not. But yeah, having it on my Switch will be even better. And the only downside I can see is that I'm going to destroy a few of those Joy-Cons playing it, because the Joy-Cons are really shoddy, to be honest. Yeah. They're really poorly made. I've actually gone through. I just had to go and buy a third set today or yesterday. Because I've worn through the original one that I got with the console plus one replacement. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to do the same on my green ones, because you know how the green ones, half of it came out in Australia and the other half came out in America. So I had to import the set so I can make a complete set of green. My original one is, which was the one I imported, is on the right, I think, and the buttons, the A buttons and all that are like, back in the day with the Game Boys and stuff, how they get really warm really quickly. It's basically that, and I'm just like, oh, it's not clicking. Yay.
Yeah, they're not good controllers, and Miku games are quite famous for being button destroying.
Yeah.
And yeah, that'll be a downside, but I'll wear the cost, because having Miku on my Switch is worth anything. Rolling through more news. Later this week, or later last week, by the time you're listening to this podcast, Idea Factory announced that it's bringing a second Death End request out, which is great. Really enjoyed the first. It was a really clever JRPG from a emerging powerhouse in the genre. I think Idea Factory is going from strength to strength, and more Death End requests will make me very happy. I don't know if I'm assuming Trent didn't play it. I don't know if you played it though, Matt.
No, I haven't yet. It's one of those games that looks interesting and I want to play it, but it came out at a time when I think there were just lots of other things coming out at the same time, and so it slipped by me a little bit. But yeah, it looks good, and I'm looking forward to playing the new one.
Yeah, that's always the way. There's always too many things to play, unfortunately.
Stop releasing so many games, game developers.
Yeah, that's it. Just get together, organize things. One per week is enough. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Nippon Ichi also had its own announcement. It's bringing Langrissa 1 and 2 to the Switch in the West, which is their remakes of very old tactics RPGs in the mold of Fire Emblem, and that's great. I'm quite a fan of Langrissa series. It's obviously not as prominent as Fire Emblem, but it has its fans, and I'm one of them. I don't know if either of you have ever played them. They were localized as Warsong, I think, originally out in the West.
I've never played
back in the day. Yeah.
No.
Nope.
But I'm excited for this just based on your excitement. Your infectious excitement about.
Well, we were talking about Fire Emblem, what was it, last week or whatever, and you mentioned you quite enjoy Fire Emblem. Well, you'll probably enjoy this one too. It's very, very much in a very similar mold, and they've kind of developed as well. Fire Emblem kind of went from strength to strength, and Langrissa stayed a little bit under the radar, but this one will hopefully get it some new fans, I think.
Yeah, but is this as fan servicey though?
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. So
that's good.
Yeah, fan service.
That was my concern.
It wasn't. We didn't have enough fan service. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of fan service, another announcement that came out this week is that Spike Chunsoft is bringing the latest Conception game out west. Now, for people who don't know about Conception, let me tell you about Conception. This is a game where you need to have babies with anime girls and then send the babies in to fight for you. And that is actually probably the best summary you're going to get of that game, to be honest. It's pretty good. I like the previous Conception games. It's not quite what you might think based on that summary, but it's it is as well. Alan would be having a nosebleed if he knew we were talking about this game, I think. But yeah, it's actually quite a good roguelike series, and I think it's good that we're getting this one coming to PS4 and PC, I believe. Switch as well. I
Where
think.
did the babies come from, Matt?
They come from Magical Essence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's
So when you talk
weird.
about
It's like you
making
make.
babies, it's not quite what you'd.
Well, it is kind of. I mean, you form this bond with this one of the girls. There's I think 12 of them in this new one. You form a bond with them, and then you go into like a machine thing, and you touch fingers, and then babies come out, and that's.
It's like a Japanese version of the stork.
It kind of is, and and then like I said, you send those babies into the dungeons to do the fighting for you because reasons. It's an oddball game, but I think if you're a fan of turn-based RPGs, roguelikes, and all that kind of stuff, Spike Chunsoft is pretty reliable for this stuff, so you can probably look forward to this one as well. I know one that you're looking forward to, Matt, Trails of Cold Steel 3. That got a new trailer, and that's very exciting.
That is very exciting.
You can elaborate on that.
Well, I can't really because I haven't actually watched the trailer yet.
It's a gameplay trailer, so it shows you actually the combat system.
Yeah.
So,
I think from some things I've read that there are some little tweaks to the combat system. Let me just find the thing. But I think overall it's still going to be a very similar. It's the same basic system as what the first two games had, because I mean that was really good, and why would you change it? But there are a few like just new abilities and things. Like there's something you can do, like a new kind of party-based ability where everyone teams up and gets a buff, gets stronger for a few turns. There are some new versions of the link attacks that were always ended up being pretty important in the first two games, where when you're setting your party up, you can choose pair up characters to be partners, and basically just depending on their relationship level, they get access to different team attacks basically, and so there's some new attacks of that. What else?
I mean, hopefully they don't mess with it too much.
No, I don't think they will. I think that's basically it. The other is just like more. Just, I mean, as in the first games, everyone had their own sort of special abilities and stuff, and they've just got new ones now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was always a pretty good combat system. So
yeah.
More of the same is certainly not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I guess the most disappointing thing about the trailer is that it was a reminder that the game isn't out till September. It's still quite a ways away, unfortunately. But you can always replay the first two while you wait.
Well, I mean, you can, but then you won't get to play the third one until September next year. If you start now.
Yeah. Putting Persona 5 to shame with how long these games are is Trails of Cold Steel. It'd be nice if it came to Switch. That would be the other thing. It'd be nice. About time. It's on Vita.
I feel like surely they have to at some point.
They probably will, and then everybody will buy it yet again. Yeah.
If they can get East 8 on Switch, they can get Cold
a good
Steel
game on
Switch. Yeah.
If they can get East 8 on there, they can get a good game on there as well. Jumping forward, another bit of news. This one I think Trent will be quite happy to talk about because I'm pretty sure he's a fan. I might be wrong, but I'm taking a stab here. There's a remake of Harvest Moon GBA coming to Switch, and it looks very nice. The GBA Harvest Moon was actually one of the better ones in that very long-running series, and yeah, the remake is looking pretty based on the first trailer we saw. So you're a Harvest Moon fan, right, Trent?
Yeah, but the problem is, I like The Wonderful Life better than the Game Boy Advance game.
Oh, okay. Let's move on then. No, the Game Boy games was great. The Game Boy Advance game was it was a good one. I mean, putting Trent aside for a moment, a lot of people consider it one of the better games in the series. So I think it makes sense to remake that one. And yeah, it's under the Story of Seasons moniker now rather than Harvest Moon, because Harvest Moon's reputation is basically destroyed from the last couple they released. So What else we got? We've got a visual novel as well coming. Soft has announced it's bringing robotics notes to PlayStation 4 and Switch and PC, and that's pretty good. I reviewed actually the anime for that one way back in 2014. It's been kicking around for a long time, and it's a really good anime. It's a really good story. It comes from the same space as Steins Gate, so with that kind of heritage, you can hardly complain about that. And I think there was another announcement for a visual novel that was just made.
Speaking of visual novels, there's a whole bunch.
Yeah.
So at I think is it Anime Expo that's what's happening on this past weekend. Anyway, it's some sort of thing. Axis Games, who they localize a lot of the Idea Factory visual novels and various other games, but they had a big presentation about a whole bunch of visual novels that they're bringing west in 2020, and so that includes so we've got Code Realize, Guardian of Rebirth, Code Realize, Future Blessings, Color X Malice Unlimited. I don't know what the difference is between those two. Something I've never heard of called Cafe Enchant.
Sorry to break in just there for a second. Can we just remind readers that or listeners that the only genre that has worse names in video games than RPGs is visual novels, because none of these titles make any sense, but they're good games, we promise. They're all actually interesting.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, something. Well, we're talking about weird names. Something called Pio Fiore. Yeah, I think that's all I've seen. But anyway, so that they're all so Otome games. So those are the kind of romance themed visual novels that were developed by Idea Factory in Japan, and they're all coming to Switch and getting a Western release. The one of those that I think really stands out to me is Color X Malice, which I played on. It came out on Vita a couple of years ago, and I played that, and it was just really interesting and just a really clever concept in that. So I mean, it's kind of like a lot of the Idea Factory games. It's a romance game, but also meshed with a lot of other kind of narrative genres. And so in this case, it's basically a detective kind of game where so there's a spree of murders in I think it's in Shinjuku. Anyway, and somewhere in Tokyo, there's a spree of gun murders, and so in a weird kind of desperate reaction, the Japanese government closes off that area to the whole rest of the city, and then lifts Japan's really strict gun laws just within that area, just as a way of, well, all the stuff's happening, so we need to let civilians have guns so that they can protect themselves. And obviously that doesn't work, because when you let civilians have guns to protect themselves, it just results in more people getting shot who don't need to. And then in the middle of that, the character that you play is a detective who then gets roped into trying to solve this crime spree, mostly by virtue of, towards the beginning of the game, getting captured and getting injected with a kind of poison that getting captured by the killer, I should say, and injected with some poison that she'll only get the antidote to if she manages to find the killer and capture him and arrest him, and then ends up working with a group of other kind of former detectives who have their own reasons for wanting to help out. But that is maybe not yeah. It's a hard thing to explain, to kind of summarize without getting into detail, but it is really quite interesting, and just the way it sort of explores the idea of gun control and just what a mess this idea of like give everyone guns so they can protect themselves.
Did you get a review for that one up on DDNet? I think you might have. Possibly. Anyway.
No.
Let's have a quick look.
I had a review for it up somewhere, but
well, wherever it is, check out Matt's review because, it sounds like an interesting game. Axis also, it wasn't announced last week. I think it was announced the week before. But Axis is also publishing the sequel to Deathmark, which was a horror visual novel that was released last year, I believe. And it's a particularly good one that I highly recommend people check out as well. I can't remember what that horror VN is called now, but it's coming out later this year, I think, as well. Axis are very busy. It must take a lot of work to localize a visual novel because there's lots of words. They must keep their workers very busy indeed. It's called
NG.
NG, that's the one. Definitely look forward to NG. Deathmark is probably my favorite visual novel, just purely in terms of the enjoyment I get from kind of playing it through. So I highly recommend checking out Deathmark if you haven't yet, and then looking forward to NG. So just quickly to run through the other bits of news because we're running out of time for this section. There was a trailer dropped for Oni-Chanbara Origin, which is a super fan servicey game that I'm sure Alan would not want us talking about on this here podcast. But it's basically a very grindhouse trash and B-grade kind of horror game with zombies and bikinis and school uniforms and all of those things thrown together. And it's a series that's been kicking around for a while. We don't actually have a Western announcement yet for Origin getting a localization, but the trailer looks okay, and D3 Publisher's pretty good at getting that stuff out here. So fingers crossed. And then finally, at the very end of last week, Space Invaders Invincible Collection got a release date in Japan. We still don't actually have no news of a Western release of this one. But given it's Space Invaders and you don't really need much Japanese to play Space Invaders, you can probably import that one safely. It comes out on March 26, 2020, so it's a while away yet. But yeah, I love me some Space Invaders, so definitely looking forward to that one.
I guess Space Invaders just doesn't have much presence in the West, so
yeah, nobody knows.
Nobody's ever heard of it.
Yeah, that's it. It's very, very niche. But yes. If we don't get an announcement for that one, make sure you import because it'll be good. I mean, the base package, not even looking at the special edition, but the base package includes Space Invaders Extreme, and that alone is worth buying for anyway. That's a very good modern take on Space Invaders. Plus, of course, you get the original arcade game from '78. Those two are really enough for the package.
I'm going to be crazy and modern, be like, Extreme is better than the original arcade.
Okay, we're going to music now. So we're not going to let you talk about that. You're both wrong. You're both wrong. This is very, very wrong. I'm very upset about this now. Music. Let's pick music from
Space Invaders Extreme. Yes. Bam. Done.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so it is Final Fantasy XIV week. We're talking about that this week because Matt's been playing it pretty hardcore, and we do love our Final Fantasy XIV. So this podcast is going to be the Final Fantasy XIV podcast. Matt, tell us about your new experiences back in Eorzea.
Well, most of my new experiences are not in Eorzea.
Oh, okay, fine.
So, because I've been playing the new expansion, which is basically sends you to like sort of an alternate dimension. And it's kind of weird to explain without getting like really bogged down in weird lore. But basically, there's an alternate dimension that you towards the beginning of the expansion you get summoned into, and it's a place where basically, I mean, as with most of the Final Fantasy games, there's this idea of having all the different elements and being in balance, and when they are out of balance, things start going haywire. And in this dimension, basically the power of light has grown too strong and pretty much destroyed most of the world, except for one small kind of, well, I say small relative to the size of the world. It's a small kind of continent where the last survivors are all trying to figure out how to deal with just the world-ending threat posed by the power of light that's been able to grow too strong. And the result of that means that a lot of things center around enemies that kind of, they remind me of Bayonetta in a way, just in that they are these things that are designed with the idea of, well, what if angels, but really creepy and evil looking?
Oh, okay. Now, I thought you were talking about like every character or every enemy looks like Bayonetta, like their hair is a weapon and they're like naked and running around the world. And that was an interesting visual I had. But okay,
No, that would be cool
bad
too. No,
angels.
like Bayonetta's enemies, like that,
Right.
that sort of.
Shrouded in light with a little, like a cloth for their hand over all their, rude parts to make it, just as, yeah.
So angels turn creepy, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think is always quite an interesting concept. Yeah, I'm not sure if just in the world as it is today, if that's the best time to release a story that's about, well, too much of any thing is bad, and like too much good is bad as well. But I guess it works as in setting up a story, and then beyond that, it's just kind of, there are some interesting new systems at work. Like, I think the one that you'll enjoy, Matt, is the trust system, which basically means when you have to go to do a new dungeon as part of your progressing the story, normally in all the previous expansions you would have to do that with other players. That was the only option, and that's still an option here, but now you can also, if you'd prefer, do it with NPC companions.
So you can basically play it like a single player game now.
Mostly. That was kind of what they were saying. There is one bit that I've run into so far that you can't do that you have to do with other players.
Right.
Which is like one of the primal fights. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, of course.
Those, like when it's
Good King.
So it's not really a whole dungeon. It's just a single boss that you fight with 8 players.
Right.
And that seems like you can only do that with other players.
Because I mean that was
fine.
That was the way I always wanted to play Final Fantasy XIV anyway. As a single player game, I didn't want to deal with other people. I like being antisocial in my MMOs, I guess.
The new zones are really, or the ones I've seen so far, so there's 6 new zones, which is pretty standard for a Final Fantasy XIV expansion, and I've seen 4 of those, which are all really cool.
Is it pretty?
Yeah. The one in particular is called Ilmeg, I think. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but anyway, it's basically the zone that's home to fairies, and it's basically just this big kind of not quite field, but there's just flowers everywhere, and it's really a big lake that is how do I describe it? A lake over the ruins of an old city that got flooded, and then surrounded by lots of like fields of flowers and various other pixie magic that then makes it all kind of dreamlike.
Right. Gotcha.
That's really, yeah.
I guess the big question now, Final Fantasy XIV is kind of at the point now where you got to ask, is it now too unwieldy for anybody who hasn't been playing along to get into it?
Well, I haven't jumped in yet. It just seems like every day.
Yeah, let's use
new...
Trent. Let's use Trent as an example. If Trent was to go and buy a copy of Final Fantasy XIV today, is he going to find it overwhelming now? Because there's just so much stuff there.
I don't think so. I mean, it'll take a while before you get all the way to the end, but I think there's. I mean, most of the new stuff doesn't really affect you until you get up to the part of the game where it's relevant.
What if I just want to play the new stuff? What if it's like the old game's just boring and I just want to play murder ghosts and angels and stuff?
You can buy like I can't remember what they're called, but basically things that skip you ahead to so normally you would need to play through the old stuff first and level up to get, because the new stuff is all built around sort of starting from when you're level 70. But yeah, you can buy things that jump you ahead to the new contents. Although I would say, yeah, I wouldn't recommend that because you'll miss out on a lot of.
You'll miss out on the Good King Mog fight, which is.
You'll miss out on the Good King Mog fight. You'll miss out on
which is the only thing that really matters in that game.
I think you might like the Titania fight, Matt.
The Titania fight.
Yeah, which is one of the new primals. It's basically the king of the pixies.
Oh, cool.
And
yeah, so it's a big pixie.
Yeah.
Cool. That would be fun.
With some just not quite Good King Mog, but interesting soundtrack, interesting piece of music that plays while you're fighting.
Actually, I meant to ask, does Hildebrand show up again?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yay! He's the coolest guy. That guy.
I haven't kept up with that story, but like that chain of side quests, I'm like really way behind on that. I need to. But as far as I know, yeah.
That was my favorite part of Final Fantasy XIV. That was the bit that I really enjoyed a lot. So for people who haven't played it before, Hildebrand is basically like a satire of Sherlock Holmes. And yeah, all of his side quests are kind of, I guess, solving mysteries, but he's an absolute idiot. And yeah, you basically solve all the mysteries for him, and he just drops in for comic relief. And yeah, he's good fun. I'm a big fan of him. They do a good job of writing those side quests.
Yeah.
Yoko Taro should write. Yoko Taro should write them all going forwards. That would be good.
Well, he'll be writing something that comes out in a couple of months for the.
Does Chocobo show up again?
No.
Oh no, that's sad. The Chocobo, not a Chocobo.
Yeah, he was just there for a special, that particular chain of quests, and I think you can get him as a pet.
Oh really?
Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So he just follows you around and
looks cute.
Yeah. What else?
It's I've kept my subscription for Final Fantasy XIV going. Like all this time I haven't been playing it. I keep wanting to get back into it, but it's just I just know there's so much commitment you've got to put into that game now. It's basically like a hobby all of itself, and I want to, but I guess the one thing I very nearly did sign in to start playing again this week, but then I saw how overloaded the servers were, and I was like, nah, I can't be bothered now. Like there have been screenshots circulating of people trying to get in, and there's been like 2,000 people wait lists and stuff, and it's like,
Really?
yeah.
Because I haven't found that at all. I think the longest queue I've seen is about 50. I mean, and that takes like maybe a minute or two before you get in. I think as far as MMO expansion launches go, it's I think the smoothest I've ever seen.
Oh, okay.
Well,
that's good to hear.
Maybe it's just Matt's bad NBN.
No, I didn't sign in. Like I said, I saw other people trying to sign in. So
yeah, I mean, it might also be just a time zone thing where
I mean,
the time that I'm usually playing is when all the Americans are asleep, so the servers are a little bit quieter.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably the reason. Especially 4th of July when it was like a public holiday over there. All the Americans were signing in to be good and patriotic by playing a Japanese game, and yeah, I think it was a bit busy that day.
But yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I'd say on that about feeling overwhelmed is that it's the story has been stretched out, and stretched out is not the word, but there's new arcs to the story. But if that's mainly what you're playing it for, there's not really anything to be lost by just dropping in and playing, a couple of hours a week and playing through.
Especially
the same way.
Especially if most of it you can basically play single player now, so there's not really any pressure.
It's only really for the new.
Oh, so they haven't
new stuff. They haven't
applied that to the old stuff.
Haven't applied that to the old dungeons yet. I think that might be the plan at some stage to do that.
So what you're saying, it's going to be overwhelming anyway, because I'm going to be lumped in with some person which doesn't know how to play, or some overpowered guy which is like, well, you don't know how to play, and then like it's just going to be a bad experience. Yeah.
I mean, most of the time you'll have a fun experience unless you're really bad unless you really just don't know how to play your job.
Yeah, you get stuck with me basically. I mean, it's not that I don't know how to play my job; it's just I, point blank refuse to.
You're pausing the game just so you can look at the character.
Yeah, I do that. I actually turn the HUD off so I can go around taking screenshots while I'm in the middle of a dungeon and all the fighting's going on around me, and that means that I'm not particularly productive at that point in time. I also like to wear the costumes that are the least practical possible, and that pisses people off. Basically, as soon as the dungeon loads up, they see that I'm on the party and they're already yelling at me. So good times. They're a very friendly bunch of people in Final Fantasy XIV.
They mostly are. I don't know. No, you might just have a way of like aggravating people because.
You think?
It's very rarely have run into. Also, maybe you just need to get better at taking screenshots while playing. That's what I do, especially when I'm reviewing it. I manage to turn the UI off and take screenshots while playing a healer as well. So, and I managed to do that without killing anyone.
Maybe it's just a good King Mog fight, because that's basically what I do. I just play that over and over and over again. And maybe it's just that one particular fight people get very intense for some reason. I don't know. On that note, we're going to go to some music, and guess what song I'm going to choose? You can't stop me. I'm choosing Good King Mog. And welcome back, everybody. Okay, so for the final section of the podcast this week, we are going to talk about our top arcade games. So this is our countdown of our top 3 games of all time for a certain category. And given all the excitement that we had about the Space Invaders announcement, we're going to talk about arcade games. So, Trent, tell us your top 3 old school arcade games of all time. Go.
Top 3 and old school. This is making it really hard. Well, let's go with Space Invaders, but the extreme version. Yeah.
That's not an arcade game, nor is it old. So bad, Trent. You're ruining this section. How dare you?
It's old. It came out on the DS, and you know it. That's like if you apply the rule, last generation was the 3DS, and then retro is DS onwards. So it is technically old.
Yeah, but the DS is not an arcade machine. Boo, Trent.
I imagine there's like an arcade version of it. It's somewhere lying around in Japan.
You've been disqualified.
Okay, I'll play seriously. All right, let's pick Space Invaders. So we have to have Space Invaders because it's fun, it's great. You know, you shoot the aliens, they come down the screen, it makes little noises going boop, 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 and then it goes pew. That sort of stuff. That's fun. That's great. So that's in the list. And then so let's also throw in Pac-Man. Pac-Man's great. I like Pac-Man, but I also like the newer Pac-Man, like all the crazy renditions of Pac-Man, which is probably going to make you hate. So that's also good. And let's go with, for a third one, let's go with, see, I want to pick some old games, but then they're probably not arcade games. Yeah. Arcade games. Surely I can go with Mario Kart, the GP Pro Racing stuff. That's technically an arcade game.
Oh, well done. Well done.
Yes.
You got a pass on that. That's actually good fun. I like that one. That's a good arcade game. You can play as Pac-Man.
Yeah. See, I know I can be sneaky and smart. So yeah, that's my list. Mario Kart's good. Mario Kart's fun. You know, you drive, race. Yeah.
I'm impressed, Trent, you were able to actually come up with 3, given that you weren't around when arcade games were a thing.
No, and well, probably am, but the problem is I live in a small country town, and small country towns, the closest thing to an arcade is, okay, we've got that airsoft game, and, you know, with the little things, and you can throw the things, and all the ticketing machines, which, like, just do bubbles, and some talk, like game. And most of them are like things with like, you know, get the balls, throw the balls into the net. So that's not an arcade. That's like 5 seconds of like bad games.
Yeah, Australian arcades, what's left of them are basically all those kind of skill tester for coupon things. There's not many actual games left anymore, unfortunately. It's sad, but...
And then you get like 5,000 coupons, which you can then buy 1 lolly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is sad. But it is kind
of new trend in arcade games that I've seen, and which is to take a mobile game and then put it on a big screen and put it in arcade and be like, all right, it's arcade Angry Birds.
Or the Crossy Road.
Yeah.
I played the Crossy Road one, and it's nuts. You get coupons for it though, because everything comes with coupons with arcade games these days.
Yeah, like there's a new arcade that just opened maybe about a year ago, in Wellington, and that's pretty much all it is. It's all those kind of things. It's like they've got Injustice, you know, the NetherRealm DC fighting game. And it's called like Injustice Arcade or something like that. And I mean, you'd think, okay, it's a fighting game, a very like pretty classic style of 2D fighting game. There's a pretty obvious route to go if you want to make an arcade version of that. But no, Injustice Arcade is then like an arcade version of the mobile like card battling game. And I'm like, what, why? Like, what is the point of this?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
See, in Australia, the arcade's the casino.
Oh dear me, Trent. That
I
was.
mean,
There you go.
you're not
I don't
wrong.
know. So my friend,
You're not wrong.
my friend gambles like excessively, and like anyway, so I'm always just watching, the games and stuff. I'm just like, how easy would it be to develop like a gambling game and just rank in the cash? Like, surely, like just like someone has to be making these games. Like,
Yeah, they're called
surely,
EA.
yeah, like, wow, like. Why can't we just like make, I don't know, like a Street Fighter, like a slot machine or something? I don't know, and then
Dude, I'm
like,
pretty sure there is one.
well, why can't that be West? I don't know, but you know
I
what I
mean,
mean, like making
if
something like that. And
you'd
Konami's
find,
been doing that for decades.
yeah, I was going to say you'd find the pachinko parlors quite fascinating, Trent, because that's exactly what they are. They're just the popular video game and anime franchises that are stuck into a gambling thing. And to be honest, it's kind of it's almost admirable. That they just cut the crap out. They just get straight to, you give us money and we'll give you the license, and there's none of this pretense about coupons and loot boxes and stuff. The gambling industry is much more honest than the likes of EA these days, which is sad. That's really sad. I shouldn't be laughing about that because it's quite sad.
I like how there was a comment. It's like one of the CEOs or something recently said that they don't understand how they're seen as the bad guy or something.
Yeah, that was EA.
Like,
That was our
yeah,
good friend
yeah.
EA.
It's just like, what? Why?
I'm just waiting for the Jim Sterling video on that. It's coming, I'm sure. If he hasn't
It
already.
was, yeah. It's not gambling; it's surprise mechanics.
He's actually, there's another one that just came out. I think it was this morning or something. Another comment from them, just regarding it can be done well or something. Microtransactions can be done well, and yeah, it's like, well, they probably can, but you ain't doing it, guys. Anyway, moving on. Matt, tell us. You're a little bit older than Trent, so you probably do remember the arcades back when they were arcades.
I guess
What were your
I
top
mean,
three?
Most of my time playing arcade games was playing on emulators, but I could cheat and just pick the same top three as I picked last week for fighting games, but I won't. Well, I'll cheat for one of them, and also, so I guess my number one would still be Guilty Gear X2, which was one game I actually have played in an arcade. And my number two will be, I guess I'll pick Ikaruga, even though I've never played that in arcade.
There was an arcade version of that?
I think so. Maybe I should double check that. I thought it was originally an arcade game that then got ported to consoles.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, shmups are pretty common for arcades, but
yeah,
I'm just thinking that would be a brutal waste of my money if I tried to play that in the arcade. It's a brutal waste of my money. I try to play that anywhere, really, but
yeah, I guess
arcade especially.
It gets expensive if you're playing arcade and you don't
Maybe
have
a bit easier if
have
it
a
was a
prepaid mode.
slot machine game.
Yeah, it was an arcade game.
I would actually lose money less. I would lose money slower if I was playing the pokies than playing a game like Ikaruga in the arcade. I really would.
And I guess for my third one, I'll go obscure and pick a game called, I better just double check that I have the actual title of it right. It's called The Ocean Hunter, which is a game, Sega. I think it was Sega. I'm pretty sure it was Sega. Okay, it's basically one of those rail shooter kind of things like House of Dead, but you're in a submarine, like under the ocean, fighting sea monsters, and that's pretty much all there is to it. But it's one that I have played a bit of over the years, probably because it's one of the few arcade games that until recently was available in Wellington, but then there are a couple of places here that had it, but it's slowly disappeared. But yeah, so it's the House of Dead underwater essentially.
That's a pretty good idea, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'd play that. I would enjoy that a lot. Yeah, for me, I would definitely have Space Invaders on my list as well. Space Invaders is great. There's a little arcade in Odaiba in Japan, and every time we go to Japan, we end up going to Odaiba for whatever reasons. There's shopping and all kinds of stuff there. There's a theme park there as well and stuff. So we do spend a bit of time there. And there's an arcade there that is specialized in kind of the old arcade games, or older ones. And there is an original cabinet for Space Invaders there. And I generally spend quite a bit of time there playing that. I do love my original Space Invaders. And so for the similar reasons that Trent does, it's got a killer soundtrack, those 3 sounds on loop. I'm not even joking. It's an amazing soundtrack. It creates this great sense of tension, and it's obviously very simple, but it's menacing, and I like that. It's art. And yeah, the simple twitch action and the fact it's not so over the top as later games became. It was more simple and clean. I quite enjoy that. So that's one. Another one is it's sort of cheating, I guess, because it's not really a video game, but it is in arcades or
Pachinko.
Close, not quite. Pinball. I love pinball, and the reason I love pinball is I spent quite a bit of time playing pinball in the arcades when I was younger, actually, when they still had the machines there. My favorite pinball game is actually the Mario Brothers one that's Nintendo licensed out. And it's actually a really clever one in that it does do the Mario aesthetic properly, and it's got pipes that you can shoot the ball down, and it's got lots of all the Mario sound effects. And especially as a kid, I just loved playing that one a lot. It was also an easier pinball table than a lot of other ones because it was pitched at a younger age. So that was kind of, I guess, the pinball game that got me into pinball.
It's a gateway drug.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, I don't know if I'll ever be able to play it again because obviously the companies making the pinball video games now aren't going to be able to get the license for Mario from Nintendo to remake that table. I guess I could get one of those digital pinball table things that have emulators of every pinball game ever made on it. I guess I could try that. But yeah, that one. And then my third one is Hatsune Miku Arcade Edition. Haha. Because it's great. It's actually a really good arcade game. And it's still around in Japan. And every time I go to an arcade, I spend a lot of money on it, even though it is just Project Diva Future Tone, but in an arcade cabinet.
I should have said Just Dance just to annoy Matt.
Just Dance is in an arcade game, isn't it?
Oh, but surely it's like in the same sort of situation. You can whack Just Dance in anything.
But I don't think it is.
An arcade game.
I don't think it's actually in arcades. I'm telling you, Miku is actually in arcades, and there's actually a really popular arcade game. That was where Miku started, really. And I don't think that those arcade machines ever made it outside of Japan. But if you ever find yourself in the country and find yourself an arcade to play around with, look for that one because it is a really good arcade title. And yeah. So, because I think rhythm games actually work pretty well in arcades too.
Yes, there is a Just Dance arcade game. Just Dance Arcade.
It'll probably be for coupons, right?
Looks like it's based off 2015 or something, 2016.
Yeah, I can't imagine that working.
Yeah.
Just play DDR.
DDR's all right. Actually, the one that I quite liked is Groove Coaster is an arcade as well, and that's a pretty good arcade game, that one. It uses it's different to a lot of other rhythm games, obviously, and didn't think it would work as an arcade title, but it does. Oh, actually, another one, I can't remember the name of it, but I enjoyed it. There was an arcade that we found. It's an older title now, I think, but it's like the controller is like a keyboard, and it's like you're playing a piano.
Oh, yeah.
I think Konami made it. I can't remember the name of it. If anybody on the podcast is listening and does happen to know the name of that one, please do tell me because I would like to check it out. But I don't know if I'll get a chance to play that one again. But yeah, it was actually a keyboard, so you had to play the notes as the notes were scrolling down the screen, and it felt pretty good. So that's my 3. And on that note, I think we'll give it a wrap this week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. As always, I hope you enjoyed the podcast and stuff. Do let us know your own favorite arcade games in the comments wherever you listen to this. If you have memories of the arcade, we'd love to hear about them. Thanks, as always, for being on, Matt and Trent. And we'll finish up with some music from... we use Space Invaders. No, we'll finish up with some music from... What did you choose, Matt? Pick a song, Matt, from an arcade game that you played.
I'll pick something from Ikaruga.
Oh, yeah, good point. That one.
It has good music.
It does. Better than the game.